I don't know if it's my accent or my impeccable sense of humor, but people sometimes forget that I am German and have thus learned a lot of things about the Nazis while in school. And because I find political extremism and also modern history rather fascinating, I also learned a lot more about the Nazis when I left school, which is basically one of the big lessons that German schools will try to teach you, is that it's always good to know more about the Nazis. But in all of that, the most important thing that I have learned is that it is essential that we consider on an individual level all Nazis to be regular human beings like you and I. And I mean, never mind people in Germany not doing this, other countries, especially Americans, don't seem to have ever been taught this lesson. Imagine the following scenario, right? Netflix comes out and announces a show set in World War II. Hardly original, to be fair. A lot of media set in World War II, but here's the twist. The characters in this historical character drama are Germans, and they're not the smuggling Jews out of Germany kind of Germans that existed back then, but like hardcore Waffen-SS type of Germans. You know, denunciants, party members, the people who worked at the concentration camps, those kinds of folks. I dare venture to say that this would not go over very well at all. I further dare venture to claim that people would be very angry that this show is attempting to humanize Nazis. I remember this was many, many years ago, and I only was reminded of it recently because that's when I watched the actual show. I was like, oh, I remember seeing this article about the show Band of Brothers, where at the end there's the scene where the Nazi general, I think it's a general, talks to his guys, his soldiers, and portrays them as these flawed but heroic characters that were trying to do their duty, and he's proud of them and they're all his comrades, which is basically the whole message that the show Band of Brothers tried to give you over the, the Band of Brothers, the American soldiers that are the main characters of the film. If you haven't seen Band of Brothers, by the way, I highly recommend it. Or better example, The Man in the High Castle, before the show that they made turned into absolute dog shit. I saw a lot of people livid that they took Obergruppenführer John Smith, who's a high-ranking Nazi official that does some terrible shit, and they make him into a family man who is capable of compassion and human emotion. Or remember when Blue Checkmarks got really angry that you could play the Nazis in the multiplayer mode of the new World War II shooter? Or just pick common media representations of Hitler himself, right? He's usually a crazy megalomaniac, a narcissist, utterly irrational, prone to just random fits of laughter over evil things that he has come up with. Hitler was actually a very quiet guy, a bit of an introvert, a very serious person who did have a lighter side that he showed with people that he was in very, very close friendship with, and he loved dogs. He loved the opera. One of the main reasons that he was such a fervent pro-German nationalist was because his heavily abusive father was such a heavily pro-Austrian royalist. We really love just dehumanizing Nazis, to present them as some sort of mystical other, something that is utterly alien to what humanity is and what we as humans are, and something that you should have no compunctions murdering because they're not really people. And look, I'm not saying that you're not allowed to have Nazis anymore in your shooter where you just mow them down because they're basically like zombies. I mean, they are Nazis, they are bad people. I've done that myself, it's very cathartic. Sometimes you just need a horrific and irredeemable villain, and it's fine to use the Nazis for that because they really fit the bill. But on a grander scale, outside of the world of being engaged with fiction, we often need to remind ourselves that the Nazis, even the worst of them, were people trying to do their best. They were flawed human beings with their own worries and problems, sympathies, likes and dislikes, just like us. The Nazis weren't evil, at least not in their own eyes. They didn't wake up in the morning gleefully thinking about all the horrible war crimes they would commit today simply for the purpose of committing horrible war crimes. They thought they were doing good things, great things even, and any time that they would run into a moral problem, a bit of a moral question where they thought, hang on, maybe what I'm doing isn't so great. It was very easy for them to diffuse away that responsibility because they were part of this greater movement that was doing something good. The good guys are the good guys, and so the good guys are right. We dehumanize Nazis not just because that's basically the only thing that we modern people can do to punish them in some way, given that they don't exist anymore, they're all dead. But the much more important reason that we do this is because we want to reject the fact that there is a Nazi in every single one of us. The ability to commit unspeakable atrocities is something that is inherent to every single human being. It is part of human nature that these things can happen. Some are more prone to it than others, but we all have the fundamental ability to do our part in committing a crime as unfathomably evil as the Holocaust. Humanity can do great good, but it can also do great evil. And this counts for every single individual person. Our virtue as human beings is not inherent, it is defined by the actions that we choose to take. Evil transcends ethnicity, gender, sexual preference, even to an extent political ideology and religion. In many history classes in my country, it is common that you do a thought experiment where you consider where you would have been and what your life might have been like if you had been born into the Third Reich. Or, not because if you had been born into the Third Reich, you'd be a bit too young to participate in any of the atrocities, but if it had happened while you were of age with agency. Of course I would prefer to believe that my inherent rebellious streak would have made me a natural dissident. I have resistance fighters in my family. Maybe I would have found that courage also. But I can't help but fear that maybe I would have deluded myself into thinking that what we were doing was actually good. I'm a decent orator. I might have become a Nazi politician that gave rousing speeches to the people who worked at the camps to keep their morale up. And in the end, I wouldn't have been one of the guys who turned the valve or drove the trains or stood watch. I'm just the guy who made sure that they felt motivated to do their job. I didn't commit the war crimes, I just made sure that the people who did commit the war crimes felt good about committing them. I do wonder sometimes how many SS officers were sort of laying awake at night when they found out that the Zyklon B that they had been delivered was not in fact for pest control. How often was there a moment where, one of the enemies that the Nazis had dehumanized, one of the people in that Hugo Boss uniform went, hang on, is this right? Clearly that didn't happen often enough. We can mourn the victims of the Holocaust as much as we want, and we should do that. We should condemn the times that it happened in, we should condemn the people that made it happen, but that won't undo the Holocaust. The reason why it is essential to remember the Holocaust, why we receive so much education on it, why it is mandatory for school classes to see a concentration camp as part of their curriculum, because most of those have been turned into museums to educate people about the Holocaust, is to make sure that nothing like it ever happens again. And that's not an easy task. To confront that you are capable of the worst evil that humanity has to offer, and to make peace with that fact, because you have to make peace with that fact, is for many people almost impossible, which is why they never even consider it. It's much easier to see it as some sort of alien thing, which is why we dehumanize Nazis. We'd prefer to think that we are just good people, so we don't have to worry about any kind of genocide happening on our watch and with our responsibility, because good people don't do that. And that's the exact place where the danger lies. is. And I don't think that all Germans have internalized that lesson, certainly, but I think that people in other countries have done so even less, for the most part. I mean, there's also a lot of people who just intuitively get this, so, you know, that see people as individuals. But it's important to not delude yourself, to not justify your actions because you are a good person doing a good thing for a good cause. You need to self-reflect, you need to question what it is that you are doing. Don't think that just because you have no desire to harm others, you are not capable of doing so. The merit of your actions in and of themselves is what you must reflect on. This is why I find people who actively seek to dehumanize another group in the public discourse to be highly suspicious, even if, and maybe especially if, the people that they are trying to dehumanize are some sort of political extremists. Because it's easy to tell when they're dehumanizing a group that is, you know, based on ethnicity, something that people have no control over. To my mind, the only reason why you would want people to stop reflecting on their actions is because you're trying to manipulate them into doing something very, very evil. And that is the exact kind of thing that needs to be avoided. Thank you very much for watching this video. Like, comment, subscribe, share this to your relevant communities, but do not spam them. Consider supporting me on Subscribestar or Patreon, buying some of my merchandise or my short story collection. And in that spirit, I do very much encourage you to engage in that thought experiment. Take your current, the status that you were born in, the social status in society. And I mean, even if you, like, maybe a lot of my viewers are Jewish, if you are Jewish, just, you know, pretend that you're not and you're born into like a, you know, Aryan type family. And just consider the path that your life could have taken and be horrified, because you will be. And see you around, cunts.